What an honor to moderate today's international conference. Good afternoon and welcome to the online conference on why countries need digital resilience strategies, safeguarding digital transformation in the age of COVID-19. This conference is the first of its kind in the region, hosted by the government of the Kyrgyz Republic, the World Bank, and the University of Central Asia. And we are pleased that you could all be with us here today. Very pleased to bring together people from so many industries, geographies, and disciplines. COVID has accelerated a number of trends that were emerging through the last few years. And while digital transformation was already at the top of many of our agendas, the urgency and the priority that is being placed on digital skills, and most importantly, digital resilience, is now significantly greater, thanks to the pandemic. One silver lining from the tragic circumstances surrounding the virus is that leaders in government, international organizations, business, and academia are coming together to deliver real change in this space. The beneficiaries will be those people for whom digitization can affect true quality of life improvement. May I take this opportunity to formally thank our distinguished speakers. We would not be here today without the support and generous time commitment from our distinguished speakers. May I now invite the Rector of the University of Central Asia, Professor Dr. Syed Sohail Hussain Naqvi, to welcome the distinguished guests and the speakers.
Thank you, Shaukat. And let me add my welcome from the University of Central Asia to all of the distinguished participants, especially our partners at World Bank, UNDP, and ITU, and of course, the State Committee on Communication. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to talk about digital resilience. The topic itself will be elaborated upon by our speakers. So I will just talk about UCA and how come we are in the middle of the mix over here. Well, I'll just tell you our reality. So as the rector, I sit in Bishkek. My CFO is at the moment is in Canada. The CIO is in Copenhagen. The COO is in Dushanbe. The head of research is in Lisbon. The head of international programs is in London. So if anything, we have to have all of this digital technology, and it has to be mighty resilient. As a university also, we have an integral role in working with the latest and the greatest, and to be an entity that is looking at all the research in the world, and to form that and to provide that mechanism of transforming that knowledge into practice. That may be through policy work and support that we provide, that may be through education programs of a degree nature, or short-term education programs, all of which we do provide. It is also an area of personal interest to me, since I am a professor of electrical engineering, and during numerous previous assignments, I've had the responsibility of sort of being an evangelist for digital technology, whether across the country or particular institutions. So now here in Central Asia, and in these difficult times that have actually supported, or rather given us a kick in the pants as far as accelerating the adoption of digital technologies, it's a real honor to have the panelists and to have this opportunity, and to let you know that there is an institution that will be here to absorb your ideas, to serve as a repository of information, and to work with the government of Kyrgyzstan, as well as the other countries here in Central Asia, to perform whatever support role we can. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sohail Naqvi. On behalf of you, all of us here today, I would like to congratulate Altenbek Ismailov for getting the appointment of chairman of the State Committee of Information Technology and Communication. And I would like to invite him to open the conference for his opening remarks.
Shaukat, thank you so much. Dear Dr. Sohail Naqvi, dear Balarma Amgabazar, dear Louis Chamberlain, dear partners, and dear distinguished guests. I remember we were meeting, I think in December or January, discussing about how digital resilience is important for us. At that moment, the world was different. We were thinking about how cybersecurity would be a prominent thing to do and important thing to do as we are moving forward. We were thinking about digital CASA as something that needs to happen in future and as an important path for our country to develop even further. But today we are living in a different world, and the world has changed and the Kyrgyzstan has changed as well. We have reassured ourselves about the importance of the digital transformation processes that we are in, and we understood that without it, we cannot have any prosperous future, and that we are all so much in a big trouble, given that COVID virus is taking over our cities, our country, and it's essentially setting up agenda for future. I think for myself, sitting up right now, I am rediscovering myself the meaning of the digital resilience. And first of all, rather than understanding it as cybersecurity, essential cybersecurity tools, I'm right now thinking about continuity. How we can ensure our businesses, our citizens, our government to move forward without disruption and deliver important services that we are committed to. That's why our government has taken essential steps in order to ensure that our citizens and our businesses have essential services that the government may provide. As you might know, we were taking a number of measures, including launching and expanding our digital platforms like Senarip ID, iGov, and other services. One of the important part was to mobilize our IT community so that they could make their as a citizen their own contribution, so that we could move on and essentially recover from the hardships that we are facing right now. We have also rediscovered the importance of the digital CASA projects that we are executing with the World Bank. I think digital resilience program is not only an essential addition to the programs that we are doing, but it is an essential part of the execution of the projects, since right now the context has changed and we need to think about how we can ensure that the digital dividends that we are expecting to have will also be resilient in coming years. That's why we are thinking hard about how we can accelerate the program of digital CASA program as soon as possible, so that our citizens may have all the benefits that we are setting a goal for each of us. This is why I think it's quite symbolic that my first international panel speech is dedicated to digital resilience topics. And as a government, we really do understand the importance of it. And I'm very much excited to see how the project moves on and what are the kind of a latest approach that we can take in order to ensure the goals that we are setting up, especially in digital resilience. Thank you so much. I'll be happy to participate in the conference.
Thank you very much, Altenbek Ismailov. May I invite Balorma Amgabazar, World Bank Country Manager for Kyrgyz Republic, for her welcome remarks.
Спасибо, Шавкат. Уважаемые коллеги, дамы и господа. От имени Всемирного банка я очень рада приветствовать вас на этом вебинаре, чтобы обсудить, как обеспечить безопасность и устойчивость цифровой трансформации и почему вообще страну нужны стратегии цифровой устойчивости. Этот вебинар организован Университетом Центральной Азии совместно с Государственным комитетом информационных технологий и связи Кыргызской Республики и Всемирным банком. Это первая из серии мероприятий по обмену знаниями о цифровой устойчивости, организованных в партнерстве между Университетом Центральной Азии, Госкомитетом информационных технологий и связи, Программой развития ООН, Международным союзом электросвязи и Всемирным банком. Мы очень надеемся, что результаты этих мероприятий будут способствовать эффективной реализации национальной концепции цифровой трансформации «Цифровой Кыргызстан» 2019-2023 годы, имплементация проекта Digital Kassa, который Алтынбек уже упомянул, и помогут эффективно тоже реагировать на вызовы пандемии COVID-19. Я бы хотела поблагодарить Алтынбека Исмаилова, председателя Госкомитета, за согласие принять участие в этой конференции и поделиться опытом и планами Кыргызстана. Пользуясь случаем, я тоже хочу поздравить его с недавним назначением на пост председателя Госкомитета и пожелать ему успехов на этом очень ответственном посту. Я бы тоже хотела поблагодарить наших партнеров по развитию и международных экспертов за то, что они присоединились к нам сегодня. Как я уже сказала, цифровая трансформация является приоритетной темой для Кыргызской Республики. Президент Республики объявил 2019 и 2020 годы годами регионального развития и цифровизации. Цифровая трансформация страны и развитие цифровой экономики – это первый шаг к достижению целей развития, обозначенных в национальной стратегии развития Кыргызской Республики на 2018-2040 годы. Всемирный банк поддерживает процессы цифровой трансформации в Центральной Азии и в Кыргызской Республике через реализацию региональной программы Digital Kassa. По-русски это звучит «Цифровая Центральная Азия и Южная Азия». Другими участниками программы являются Афганистан, Узбекистан и Таджикистан. Региональная программа Digital Kassa направлена на то, чтобы сделать интернет более доступным, а также привлечь частные инвестиции и повысить возможности участвующих правительств по предоставлению цифровых государственных услуг в Центральной Азии. В октябре прошлого года была начата программа цифровой устойчивости, чтобы помочь Кыргызстану и другим странам Центральной Азии более эффективно реагировать на растущие цифровые угрозы. Ожидается, что эта программа позволит нашим странам-клиентам правильно определить и оценить цифровые риски и установить соответствующие стратегии и механизмы защиты. Эта программа дополняет региональную программу Digital Kassa и фокусируется на анализе и снижении рисков для кибербезопасности, обеспечении непрерывности деятельности и конфиденциальности данных в проекте Digital Kassa в Кыргызской Республике. Вопросы обеспечения цифровой устойчивости вызывают растущую обеспокоенность на глобальном и государственном уровнях в контексте COVID-19. Эта пандемия резко ускорила процесс цифровой трансформации. Свежие данные показывают, что мы сделали цифровой скачок в будущее и в течение 8 недель совершили цифровой переход на 5 лет вперед как в личном пользовании, так и в бизнес-секторах. Становится все более очевидно, что страны, которые инвестировали в национальную широкополосную инфраструктуру и чье население и предприятия связаны между собой цифровыми платформами, развиваются лучше, чем другие. И чтобы быть более эффективным, цифровая трансформация должна быть безопасной, устойчивой и стабильной. Пандемия COVID-19 вызвала обеспокоенность по поводу способности предоставлять услуги без сбоев на совершенно новом уровне, как для частных, так и для государственных организаций по всему миру. Странам Центральной Азии необходимо адекватно реагировать на растущие цифровые угрозы и риски. В Кыргызстане во время пандемии организации государственного и частного секторов сталкиваются с трудностями в обеспечении непрерывности, конфиденциальности и безопасности услуг, особенно в таких секторах, как здравоохранение, образование и другие. Чтобы преодолеть эти трудности, нам нужна сильная политическая воля и многостороннее партнерство включая правительство, бизнес, академические круги, гражданское общество, а также партнеров по развитию. С этой связи я бы хотела отметить важность нашего нового партнерства с Университетом Центральной Азии, программой развития ООН и Международным союзом электросвязи в рамках программы обеспечения цифровой устойчивости по проекту Digital Kassa. Сегодня у нас очень впечатляющий список докладчиков, и я призываю их порекомендовать конкретные и практические действия, которые могут улучшить цифровую устойчивость в Кыргызстане. Большое спасибо.
Thank you very much, Balorma Amgabazar. Thank you for all the support from your team at the World Bank in organizing this conference. May I now invite Louisa Chamberlain, UNDP resident representative for the Kyrgyz Republic, for her welcome remarks.
Thank you so much, Shaukat, for that, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and of course, let me join others in particularly greeting Mr. Altinbek Ismailov as the new chairman of the State Committee, and Bolorma and Professor Sohail, a pleasure to have your invitation to be here with you this evening and to be part of this discussion on successful digital resilience strategies. I'm quite pleased that this discussion is taking place right now with the growing importance of these strategies for countries to develop services to citizens in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and crisis, which clearly highlights the need for stronger digital connectivity and delivery of core government functions. We've already seen in Kyrgyzstan how the closure of government offices has reduced the access of population to key services. So business continuity was hampered for government. And also until now, I think many government officials have continued to working in physical offices, not only because of infrastructure issues, but due to the location of data and information in offline data files and paper-based systems. At the same time, we also have a significant digital divide still in Kyrgyzstan. I think internet penetration is mostly in urban areas, and although the infrastructure is gradually improving, and there are more mobile subscriptions than people, the actual mobile internet users, I think, is still quite low. If I understand correctly, around 1/4 of the population, which indicates that a majority is still not using smartphones. But now, while the COVID-19 outbreak has caused a setback of development progress globally and very much so in Kyrgyzstan, it also creates new opportunities, as we see. Not least, the government has in some cases been able to keep the door open by operating on digital platforms. And also in the future, we will have better support for digital data integration and use of data for decision-making, establish digital payment platforms and other opportunities for e-commerce systems, digital financing options, and so on. So technologies are becoming quite ubiquitous, and they're a natural part of our day-to-day life. And this mainstreaming of technology, it forces society to confront issues of cybersecurity and personal data protection as well. And so the development of this of a digital resilience strategy is important not just for ensuring data security, but for protecting individual rights and the integrity of personal information on the internet, basically preventing the violation of human rights by the use of digital systems. Because why is this so important? It's because governments will be expecting to deliver more digitalized services and enable access to information and function in transparent and accountable and effective ways. And so when governments come under growing pressure to navigate in crisis and uncertainty, it will be even more important that they can work together with civil society to advance social cohesion while also upholding the rule of law, especially in fragile and conflict-affected contexts where justice concerns are sometimes also more acute. And as UNDP, we support partners in making choices that build more social capital to deliver inclusive services and help to open up this civic space, to lay foundations for the future, bringing about what we call a new social contract, that is reflective of people's agency, that builds trust between people and the state. And so with that kind of social contract in mind, the development of a digital resilience strategy can allow countries to consider these challenges in a strategic way and establish the relevant legal and organizational network and infrastructure. And that can also allow for effective coordination between government and non-government actors and clearly stipulate the roles and responsibilities in achieving this aim. I think a digital resilience strategy can also provide clear guidance on the rules of the game, what the future regulatory environment should deliver on, and to the different stakeholders on their respective roles in ensuring digital resilience and how they can act to supportively to achieve those goals. So it will be important that a digital resilience strategy can be developed through an inclusive process involving all relevant stakeholders. So my point is that this cannot be done by government alone, but it has to include both the private sector and civil society to develop a common understanding on key issues. So by that said, I just want to appreciate again the organizers for this timely discussion, and I'm very happy that UNDP can be a part of this initiative in some form. For us now at this juncture in the looking forward to post-COVID recovery, addressing this digital disruption, that's a cornerstone of UNDP's global economic recovery offer, if you will. And with our work on national development policies, technology reform, and digital skills development, and also our close involvement with progressive justice sector reforms, I think we can add value and also help stakeholders ensure that these plans are consistent with countries' aims and commitments. So I hope that this is among the first, but certainly not the last discussions on the digital resilience agenda, and that we can expand this conversation to various national institutions and key citizens groups. Let me also mention before ending that the UN Secretary General just launched a roadmap for digital cooperation, which proposes practical policy actions to strengthen the digital inclusion in economy and society, human and institutional capacity, and on human rights standards, and addressing issues related to digital security, which will be, I think, relevant for all member states going forward. So we're happy to be part of this, very excited to be invited to the discussion in this evening, and I look forward to learning more from all of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Louisa Chamberlain. The University of Central Asia is looking forward to working with you and your team in future also. May I now invite Farid Nakli, Program Coordinator at International Telecommunication Union, for his welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Shaukat, and thanks a lot for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here. And good evening, everyone. And let me also take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Altinbek Ismailov with his appointment as the chairman of the State Committee for IT and Communication. The committee is our main counterpart in the country, and we very much enjoy working with you. Let me say a few words about the International Telecommunication Union, because we're a small agency and probably not everyone is aware of what we're doing. ITU is a UN specialized agency responsible for the development of international standards. And of course, part of our mandate is cybersecurity. We help countries to develop their national cybersecurity strategies. We establish and enhance national certs, and we build sophisticated technical skills of the staff of the certs, and even broader. Core principle of our work in this domain is partnership. Thanks to our unique membership structure, ITU has access to world-class expertise from most leading public and private security domain. And on behalf of my organization, I would like to express our support for this digital resilience initiative in Kyrgyzstan and Central Asia. We do believe in multi-stakeholder approach and appreciate World Bank's efforts and the University of Central Asia efforts to bring us all together and to work in this direction. As I said, our main counterpart in the country, the State Committee for IT and Communication, but of course we will be happy to work with a variety of partners to advance this initiative. I believe we'll have some time later to elaborate this in more details during our panel discussions, so I'm not going to delay this anymore, and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Farid, and to all of you for setting the scene for the forthcoming discussion. It's amazing to see the partnership. I think that's definitely the name of the game at the moment. So we'd now like to introduce Rafał Rochazinski to give his keynote address and also moderate the ensuing discussion. Rafał is a founder and principal of the SecDev Group, a Canadian geopolitical analytics firm working at the intersection of digital transformation and social, political, and economic change. He has held a number of senior advisory roles, including being an advisor to the UN in over 37 countries. He's also presently a senior fellow at the Center for International Governance Innovation, and he will address us on the topic of securing and sustaining digital transformation under COVID-19, why countries need digital resilience strategies. Rafał will then moderate a discussion amongst our esteemed panelists. We are joined today by Oleg Petrov, Digital Resilience Lead for Central Asia at the World Bank. We're also joined by Melissa Hathaway, President of Hathaway Global Strategies LLC and former cybersecurity advisor to the Bush and Obama administrations. Andrew Stock joins us as the former UK Government Deputy Chief Information Officer and Chair of the UK Government Technical Officers Council. And Randeep Sudan joins us as well, founder of Multiverse, a Singaporean social enterprise in data analytics and AI. Over to you, Rafał.
Thank you very much, and it's a really great pleasure to be joining you digitally from Canada for this particular seminar. Let me also join my voice in congratulating Altanbek Ismailov for his ascension to the position of chairman. There is no time like the present to become resilient, and I wish you all the best of luck in taking on this post at a time when perhaps it is most critical for Kyrgyzstan. Let me just take a moment here to share my screen so we can get slides started. So the topic today is, of course, digital resilience, and perhaps nothing more than digitalization has been the single biggest transformative feature of society in our generation. It's the driving fundamental change across all societies. Digital transformation has become embedded as the core of development, recognizing the fact that it holds the power to empower individuals, societies, and to drive fundamental socioeconomic change. COVID-19, as already has been mentioned, has fundamentally changed the calculus of digital transformation. Whereas previously it was simply an important driver of progress and prosperities for countries, in the last 3 months it's become a critical imperative to the response and recovery to the COVID-19 pandemic. Safeguarding and securing digital transformation is what digital resilience is all about. Now, digital resilience itself is not new. Its foundations, enablers, and pillars are the same as those that are necessary for digital transformation. But it's the practice and application of digital resilience that makes societies better able to withstand shocks such as COVID-19 and to make best use of their investments in transforming institutions, infrastructure, and ultimately societies through digital technologies. Now, resilience is not a new concept. It describes the capacity to adapt to changing circumstances and to cope with crisis and adversity shocks, and to bounce back from difficult events. This picture is of an American who, although born without legs, competes successfully as a wrestler, perhaps an emblem of what resilience is all about. So in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about the impact of digital transformation and that it's had in all societies, and how that's changed under COVID-19. I'll discuss some of the lessons learned and observations of how digital leaders have adapted to the challenge of the pandemic, and describe a framework for building digital resilience at the national level. Finally, I'll speak a little bit about the priorities facing Kyrgyzstan now and in the immediate future. Now, digital transformation is a principal source of opportunity and risk in the contemporary world that can be seen in at least 5 core dimensions: technology, economics, society, inequality, and change itself. Technology is advancing at a relentless pace, but it's the impact that technology is having that really brings its real life effects. For example, in the last few years, the cost of energy has fallen dramatically, allowing the spread of digital technologies into all regions of the world where previously they could not be sustained. Likewise, healthcare has been transformed by the application of genomic sequencing, itself enabled by digital technologies, which holds the promise for the development of new drugs and cures for diseases such as cancer. Investment into artificial intelligence, a technology which in of itself may transform all others, is set to quadruple over the next 5 years. And the size of networks now encompassed by digital devices is growing exponentially as every device becomes a relay on the global network. This transformation is sustained and will continue to fuel both opportunity and disruption for the foreseeable future. Technology, collectively, the digital economy to which these technologies have given rise continues to increase and is expected now to generate about 30% of global GDP by 2025, an almost 3-fold increase in just 10 years. And that's prior to the COVID-19 emergency, which has given rise to an expected shift into digital within a very, very short period of time. It's also important to note that our digital world is also very young. 50% of all internet users worldwide are under the age of 24, a percentage that would be even higher if we were to take into consideration children under the age of 14, which are generally not captured in national surveys. Over 90% of these young internet users are also users of social media, which means that they inhabit the internet not only as local consumers of local resources, but as citizens and consumers of global platforms and resources. These new digital natives are shaping the way that the environment is evolving in all its dimensions, but most importantly, in terms of the way that the environment is being used to drive change and the norms and behaviors that it will encompass. Unfortunately, the digital world remains one of great inequalities. The digital divide separates those who have access from those who do not. The majority of users are still within advanced economies, almost 90%, while the least developed emerging economies still have the majority of their populations, almost 80%, disconnected from the connected world. The digital divide also separates urban areas from rural areas, young people from old people, those with money from those without money, and also men from women. These divisions exacerbate social tensions and are creating a new category of the digitally poor and the digitally disadvantaged. Finally, the digital world is also one of change, where the impact of technologies has given rise to new forms of social and political activism that goes beyond existing political parties. Young people are discovering new forms of political identity based on gender, grievance, as well as older forms of mobilization around violent extremist views. This is manifesting itself in an unprecedented era of turbulence and rapid social change that is challenging existing norms and conventions. While this disruption was already causing stress and dislocation for existing institutions and challenging prevailing norms, all of this has become drastically more relevant and urgent with the COVID-19 crisis. COVID represents perhaps the greatest challenge to humanity in several generations. Within a span of several weeks, between 20 to 30% of the global population has become confined to their homes. This has disrupted global trade, leading to a 31% decline in the last quarter, and almost an 8% decline in global GDP is projected for this year. Nothing has been immune. Disruptions to supply chains have threatened basic food security of nations. National economies have come under the stress from financial risk, massive unemployment, and sharp drops in national revenue. Public health is at risk from the virus for which there is no immediate cure, nor effective containment strategy, and public safety has come under risk as fear and uncertainty increasingly leads to civic unrest and protest against authorities unable to cope with the crisis. COVID crisis has also had a distinct digital dimension. Overnight, we have all become massively dependent on digital infrastructures as the virus has enforced social distancing and work has shifted online. In the last 3 months, telecommunications carriers have reported a 40 to 50% increase in traffic on wireless networks. Cloud service providers are reaching volumes never before seen, and the use of video conferencing as measured by traffic has increased by over 700%. COVID has prompted an unexpected and unaccelerated digital transformation as governments and businesses and individuals have stopped stability by moving activities online. Governments have implemented continuity strategies which have emptied buildings and shifted the delivery of essential public services to the coordination through internet-based resources. Everything from the distribution of medical assistance to the delivery of medical services through telemedicine, education, and other critical government services is now largely occurring online or through the use of digital technologies. And as the dependence on these technologies has grown, so too has the opportunity for cyber criminals, state actors, or even vandals interested in creating chaos to exploit everyone's dependence on these technologies through a massive surge in all forms of cybercrime. Between January and March 2020, the use of COVID-19 themed malware grew by over 30,000%, recognizing that families frightened by the consequences of pandemic were looking for information online. In March, Microsoft reported over 1 million attacks per day, which is since tapered off to approximately 100,000 per day. But the centrality of digital infrastructures continue to make all digital infrastructures and devices a target, and will continue to do so as long as social distancing remains the only viable means of containing the pandemic. Now, we took a look at digital leaders, and digital leaders are countries that are furthest along the road of digitization and digital transformation. In our research, we found that digital leaders, we wanted to see whether digital leaders did better or worse in responding to the COVID-19 crisis. Our survey, which took a look at a sample of 120 countries, isolated the 25 most advanced digital economies, and found that countries furthest along in the process of digital transformation, meaning possessing the capabilities, human resources, and institutions, generally did better to responding to COVID than those ranking lower on the digitization scale. This means digital leaders were on average better able to contain outbreaks and lower transmission rates while minimizing economic impact. But there were also important lessons learned. First of all, digital transformation didn't lessen the impact of COVID-19. For those countries impacted by the pandemic, whether they were digitally advanced or not, did not have a bearing on the degree to which their economies would be impacted by the disease. However, digital leaders were able to respond faster to the pandemic. Their ability to recognize transmission, isolate causal factors, and deploy resources aided by national capabilities inclusive of telecommunications infrastructure, a capacity for data analysis, the continuity of institutions, and their ability to continue operating under stress made the difference. Digital leaders were also able to deliver services faster and in a more sustained manner than those who lacked these capabilities and were able to innovate faster. For example, in both Singapore and Estonia, rapid public-private partnerships in the form of hackathons quickly drove innovation into developing contact tracing applications, which are important to contain the spread of the disease. Finally, digital transformation also made the response more complex. Issues such as privacy and data governance opened up questions that required judicial review, which may have slowed the implementation of stringent control mechanisms overall. Now, digital resilience as a definition really refers to the agility and the adaptability of the laws, regulations, institutions, and human resources and infrastructure that underpin digital systems and their ability to withstand and bounce back from crisis or shocks. Digital resilience is a transversal concept, meaning that it's broad and runs across all society, that measures recovery, continuity, adaptability of digital governance and digital economy and cybersecurity during and after periods of disruption. Now, digital resilience is a concept that is organic to digital transformation. The World Bank has conceptualized digital transformation in the digital economy as being built along both analog and digital foundations and the existence of a digital sector, and that the adoption of digitization happens through transmission belts of government, business, and society as a whole. Now, digital resilience as a concept has evolved from a narrow focus that initially looked at cybersecurity or the cybersecurity aspects of this digital transformation, but has grown to now embrace risk management practices and in the acknowledgement of the government in setting standards and maintaining capabilities for the public interest. The current definition of digital resilience is comprehensive, overarching approach that recognizes that safeguarding digital transformation requires the active participation of all societal stakeholders and a common set of risk management practices and behaviors. Digital resilience is now conceptualized as a whole of society approach that is based on some key enablers. So key to that framework of whole of society are 4 central enablers: cybersecurity, business continuity, data and privacy governance, and digital citizenship. Let me now briefly turn to each of these. So cybersecurity is essential to ensuring the integrity and the availability of digital infrastructures, as well as protecting them from adversaries and criminals. The internet is not in and of itself a secure technology. At the engineering level, it was built for interoperability. And in the absence of attention to security means that the current generation of services is built on top of an internet that now covers government services and commerce, but is dependent on an infrastructure which in of itself is insecure. To the extent to which these infrastructures remain fundamentally insecure is pretty significant. Presently, over 26,000 objects at any given time of critical infrastructure around the world are insecure and exposed, and this includes electrical grids, water treatment centers, and other critical infrastructure. The detection of incidents can sometimes take a very long time. In the US, for example, it takes on average 197 days to identify an incident and 67 days to contain it. The annual estimated cost of cybercrime may be projected as high as $6 billion globally by the end of next year. Yet cybersecurity is core to securing the national digital economy. Cybersecurity introduces trust, safety, and availability of all digital systems that ensures a secure national digital ecosystem. Cybersecurity abilities and capabilities include a national cybersecurity strategy, a national response capability, risk management standards, and trusted digital identity. A second enabler of digital resilience is business continuity. COVID-19 demonstrated that resilience was based upon an ability to address risks in an integrated fashion. Business continuity consists of the ability to prevent and mitigate the consequences of crisis, to aid in recovery, and to promote the adaptability of institutions to work under adverse conditions. Business continuity includes establishing a national crisis management capability that can consist of disaster management strategy, crisis management capabilities, the ability to exercise that implemented capability, and to continually test it. And lastly, it includes the ability to conduct threat risk assessments and to develop scenarios against which these capabilities can be maintained and developed for future crises. The third key enabler of digital resilience is data governance and privacy, and it is among the most important enablers to date. By 2025, the global digital universe will consist of over 170 zettabytes of data, which represents more than has been created since the beginning, more data than has been created since the beginning of humanity, at least 15 times over. Data governance and privacy is important because data is the new oil of the digital era that requires careful definition of things such as property rights, protections, and ultimately a right of privacy for the individual. A trusted digital ecosystem includes laws that define these important concepts, institutions that are able to adjudicate and arbitrate disputes, architectures that can be used predictably by all segments of societies, and capabilities for using and leveraging data in decision-making. Finally, it requires citizens who understand their rights and responsibilities and are able to advocate for those rights effectively. The last enabler of digital citizenship, or of digital resilience, is digital and citizenship. The new data ecosystem means that citizens' actions are no longer governed just by the boundaries and limits of state authority, but they are also subject to the rules imposed by extraterritorial platforms. Citizens that are aware, informed, and skilled to operate within this local and global environment are essential to ensuring digital resilience at that national level. And the debates around the degree to which operators of global platforms are responsible and accountable to national authorities are being debated on a daily basis. And the outcome of that debate will define the nature of citizenship for the next few generations ahead of us. So, besides the all-important enablers of digital resilience, how digital resilience actually is embodied is through societal pillars, which these capabilities, behaviors, and practices occur. These three pillars represent government, business, and society, and each have a specific role in national digital resilience. Government has the role of providing leadership and vision, and goals of securing and enabling the environment consists of standards and regulations and laws that ensure that the public good and the benefit of all societal stakeholders. Government also has the role of ensuring national capabilities for the benefit of all national stakeholders. Governments act on these goals through a mandate to protect, plan, and prepare that manifests itself in specific concrete results that include the development of national strategies, specific resilience capabilities, a legal framework for data and privacy governance, ensuring universal access to infrastructures, and developing digital delivery services that include areas such as health, education, finance, emergency response, defense, public safety, critical infrastructure, and open data. Business has a specific role to play in making digital systems on which the economy is based resilient. It does so through the application of resilience principles and best practices, and acts through the adoption of means such as digital risk governance, digital risk management frameworks, and ensuring compliance with those standards. The results of applying digital resilience principles and best practices include those that become the norm within all corporate practice, whether those corporations are for profit enterprises, government institutions, or non-governmental organizations. They include things such as the creation of positions responsible for digital resilience, such as chief information security officers, the adoption of risk registers that include digital risks, and the establishment of practice of disaster recovery plans. It can also include the creation of other means to absorb risk, such as the development of insurance practices. Society at large also has a role in digital resilience. Becoming digitally resilient means growing digital citizens. The goal is to ensure that skills and behaviors become part of the value chain to reinforce, and they're reinforced throughout an individual's life within family, schools, universities, and through broader public awareness campaigns. The result is an informed, literate, digital citizenship who understands the roles and responsibilities that can be exercised in a digital world. Together, these three pillars and four key enablers are the manner in which digital resilience becomes the organic backbone for safeguarding the benefits of digital transformation. But of course, COVID-19 leaves us with an uncertain future. The reality is that there is no linear path out of this crisis. As of June this year, 20% of the population remains under the conditions of lockdown or social distancing. 40 to 60% of the global population remains at risk from the virus, and an estimated cost to the global economy may be as high as $9 trillion. In the short term, strengthening resilience in response and addressing requires addressing critical gaps, and an urgent priority is to ensure the continuity of all societies impacted by the pandemic. In the long term, mainstreaming digital resilience as the core component of an integrated response will allow societies to eventually adapt and thrive under these new and changed circumstances, which are expected to endure for the immediate and extended future. For Kyrgyzstan, This digital reality and this digital future is also a priority. Since the country launched its path on digital transformation, it has put itself on a trajectory to leveraging digital means to surmount the challenges of not just national development, but now also the pandemic. It's necessary, it's a priority to strengthen resilience of digital transformation so as to continue to make Kyrgyzstan resilient to these new circumstances. In specific terms, there are 4 priority areas, most of which have already been identified by the government. The first is a continued commitment to expanding access and services. As has already been said, Kyrgyzstan has a significant digital divide that needs to be urgently bridged. With less than 50% of the population unconnected to the internet and important features such as only 1/3 of the population having access to a bank account and only 5% using online payments, there is a need to grossly expand access in order to have digital transformation have meaning and in order to give resilience to the country to present and future shocks. At the moment, only 70% of the population of Kyrgyzstan is under the age of 35, meaning there's a huge untapped pool of talent ready for the digital era. Priorities have to include accelerating the current national strategy to improve access and to build out core public services and stimulate the expansion of service to underserved areas through investment, innovation, and public-private partnerships. Secondly, Kyrgyzstan also needs to strengthen its resilience operations capability. This includes adopting a national approach to integrated risk management and the implementation of a standards-based approach to risk management within government and within industry. It means a commitment also to providing the appropriate planning tools and training to ensure a uniform application of these best practices across government and the national economy. Kyrgyzstan also needs a national digital resilience capability which is not entirely focused on security. Cybersecurity is a whole of society challenge that requires both centralized capabilities for operational response, but also a general ability to model risks and threats, as well as to provide training, awareness raising, and support to government institutions, private sector, and non-governmental institutions. Resilience operations capability needs to be a civilian capability and one which is capable of supporting all of society. Third, there's an urgent need to put in place a data protection authority. While Kyrgyzstan has already adopted a data protection law, the existence of an institution which can conduct investigations, enforce rules, recommend and set standards, enforce compliance, arbitrate disputes, will ensure that how data is collected, used, shared, will empower a more effective response to COVID-19 and resolve privacy concerns around the employment of contact tracing applications and surveillance. And lastly, Kyrgyzstan needs to invest into digital citizenship. As has already been stated, Kyrgyzstan needs a new generation of citizens that are engaged, literate, and who gain skills at all stages of their lives and are best able to advocate for the best interests of society and their rights in the digital era. Digital citizens are the foundational enabler for achieving the benefits of digital transformation and a better life for the future. Digital resilience is important to Kyrgyzstan as it is for all countries in the world. Countries become resilient through their embracement of digital transformation. But the digital transformation itself becomes resilient when laws, institutions, human resources adopt practices and behaviors to strengthen cybersecurity, enhance business continuity, and define and protect governance and privacy, and strengthen ultimately the culture of digital citizenship. Thank you very much for your attention. And I think I'd now like to turn to our panel to begin to address some of the questions that have been raised in my presentation. So with that, perhaps I'd like to invite our panelists for some comments. And I'd like to start maybe with our colleague Randeep, who, apart from being an entrepreneur in Singapore, has also been a long-standing expert with the World Bank looking at digital transformation. Randeep's experience is wide, and I think the fact that he's been able to witness firsthand how the crisis has unfolded in some of the world's most advanced economies gives him a unique perspective in commenting on why resilience is such an important feature today. So Randeep, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rafael. And that was a very wide-ranging and comprehensive presentation. And there were quite a few good ideas which you have shared with us. So what I would like to do is to reflect on your presentation and focus on 3 areas which might illustrate the type of interventions or the type of initiatives that a country like Kyrgyzstan could take up in the context of digital resilience. So the first area, I think, is to look more broadly at the topic of business continuity, which was one of your key foundational elements, Rafael. So if we look at business continuity planning, I think we can look at digital resilience as using digital technologies for resilience. So one of the first elements which would need to be addressed is in terms of an assessment of risk. Now, when we look at business continuity planning, it has a couple of important areas. So for example, technology, of course, is one of them. Public health and safety is another. Economic and financial, talent, staffing, supply chains now, especially after our experience in COVID, and also natural disasters, climate change. So there are different aspects which need to be looked at in a more holistic way if we are to plan for business continuity. Now, at the moment, it is a little difficult to be able to assess these risks of each of these elements and arrive at a good understanding, which is economy-wide and which gives us a good insight as to what is the nature of risk and what is the extent of risk when we are looking at the economy from a business continuity planning standpoint. So one approach which might be useful to adopt in this case is to use digital tools to automate the process of assessing risk. So for example, if we look at climate change or we look at natural disasters, there's a company whose name is 427. And this company has brought out a range of tools which can automate the process of assessing risk in the context of climate change and disasters. Similarly, if we look at technology, especially when we are looking at cyber risk, there's a company like BitSight. And I'm just citing these companies as examples. There are quite a few other players who could also be cited. But just to illustrate this point, I'm taking up individual companies to highlight what it might be possible to do in terms of automating assessment of risk. So BitSight can, again, remotely assess risk and cyber risks using automated technologies. Similarly, if you look at public health and safety, there's another company, Verisk, which has done a lot of interesting work in automating the risk assessment for public health. If you look at talent and staffing, there are companies like Burning Glass or EMSI, which have automated the whole process. Similarly, for supply chains, there's a company called Sai Global, which has done a lot of work in this space. So the idea is that maybe for a country like Kyrgyzstan, it might be a good idea, good approach to partner with some of these companies which have tools which can automate the whole process of risk assessments and leverage those tools across both the public and private sectors. Because that is something which I find hardly there's any country which has followed this approach, and this might be an opportunity for Kyrgyzstan to do something different and more significant in terms of assessing risk. So that's one suggestion. The second suggestion in the case of digital resilience might be to focus on this whole area of digital twinning. Now we find that all the strategic technology trends point to the fact that the digitization of people, of objects, of places, of processes is a long-term trend, and this is something which would give a competitive advantage to a country which has a strategy and has initiated action which can capture the digitization of the analog world, and to that extent is more prepared to be able to respond to challenges and to respond to difficulties like the one we are witnessing with COVID. Now, when we look at digital twinning, there's just one national strategy on digital twins, which has been adopted by the UK, and it looks specifically on critical information infrastructure. So I feel that maybe a country like Kyrgyzstan could start small, could identify one element of critical infrastructure, and we could start the whole process of creating a digital twin of those critical infrastructure assets, so that we are in a better position to understand the implications of any threats to this infrastructure and are able to model those risks and be able to respond better. That's one piece. The second part on digital twins might be to help smaller companies like SMEs to start digitizing their processes and their products and services. And I find that Singapore has, after COVID-19, launched a program which they call as a digital resilience bonus. This is part of their recent budget. And they have identified the food and beverages sector as one sector and retail as the second sector, which has been impacted very adversely because of COVID-19. So for each of these companies which are in food and beverages or in retail, they have launched a scheme where if a company adopts IT or adopts digitization of the HR and payroll, there's a payout of 2,500 Singapore dollars. If the company goes on to an e-commerce platform, there's another $2,500. And if the company adopts data analytics and AI, then there's a payout of $5,000. While this amount may seem large, I feel that there may be possibilities for Kyrgyzstan to help SMEs at price points or at a cost which is much lower than this, but the directional, the directional thinking in terms of introducing digitization as part of these SMEs is something which is worth adopting. So that's another area which I think would be very important in terms of building digital resilience. The third and final area which I wanted to mention is this area of cyber risk insurance. Now, this is something which has not been adopted on a big scale by countries, though I find that there are states in the US which have started adopting cyber risk insurance as a strategy. Now, why cyber risk insurance is important is not merely from the point of view of providing some element of comfort in the case of cyber threats. But what is more important is that the process of obtaining an insurance requires us to take stock of our data assets, which is very important, number one. Number two, those data assets need to be given an economic value, because unless there's a monetary value assigned to these data assets, it is not possible to fix a premium. So the process of pursuing cyber risk insurance ensures a complete inventory of data assets and giving a monetary value to those assets. Now, this is really important in a world where artificial intelligence and analytics is becoming very important, because a national strategy on cyber risk insurance would mean that we might be able to make an inventory of data assets both in the public and the private sector, and also be able to create data markets, because we would have assigned monetary value to each of these data assets. So that's one element of cyber risk insurance. Another big benefit would be that the private sector, the insurance companies, would help to create a talent pool which is both capable of doing cyber risk assessments and of doing data valuations, which are capabilities which will be in high demand going forward. So not only are we having a better understanding of cyber risk, but we are also, through the process of insurance, creating data markets and creating a talent pool which would make the economy more resilient. Now, often people think that the cyber risk insurance might be a very expensive proposition. So when we look at some of the experience of the states in the US, so a state like a province like Georgia has taken up, say, $100 million policy on cyber risk insurance with a premium of 1.8 million annually. Now you look at another state, Montana, which has a policy for just $2 million with a premium which is about $88,000, and it is much smaller. But the fact that Montana has a cyber risk insurance policy for the whole of government means that the whole of government needs to be audited, needs to be assessed from a risk perspective. And the whole process of identifying data assets and valuing them necessarily has to be done even for that risk premium. So I feel that this is an area which is worth looking at seriously from, say, the point of view of creating data markets, becoming more capable to handle AI and analytics in the future, to train a talent pool on cyber security and data valuation, and essentially to become more resilient because there's a better understanding of cyber risks and a better capability to deal with those risks and threats as and when they occur. So these are some thoughts which I thought it might be good to share with you. These are ideas which are not common, which are not already adopted, except in very limited context. And this is an opportunity for a country like Kyrgyzstan to not only adopt these ideas, but also to, in a sense, leapfrog in terms of thinking and in terms of implementation, which might be very useful and very valuable as we think about the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Randeep, and for making that, I think, very wide-ranging, but also very focused point on why business continuity, why continuity in of itself is such an important enabler of digital resilience. And from continuity, I think let's turn our attention to cybersecurity. We're very fortunate to have with us today Melissa Hathaway, who, apart from having served 2 separate presidents of the US in cybersecurity strategy, has also been working extensively with some of the world's leading corporate and corporations on understanding the governance of cybersecurity. So, Melissa, perhaps you could share with us some of your thoughts on the importance of cybersecurity and the preparedness of cybersecurity. Just over to you.
Great. Well, good evening, everybody. And I'm really very honored to be able to be with you. And I just want to build on some of the thoughts that we've already had. And I'm going to share just a screen here for, and tell me if you can see it. But you know, as Rafal said, I've been working on different frameworks for building stronger cyber readiness, digital readiness for the last decade. And it really comes from the experience that I had from working with 2 very different presidents and styles, and then also through working with institutions like the ITU and World Bank, and with each of your respective countries. And at the core of this is that all of our countries and our companies too, but we really need to strategically assess what's at stake. And I think COVID-19 really has brought forward some of those, they brought forward some of those where we are with the dependencies. And Rafal talked about it. You know, the use of these collaboration tools like Zoom has gone up by 1,200%. Video streaming up 50%. Online gaming for our children has gone up. But we've put a tremendous strain on our telecommunications infrastructure. And that is something we need to be really concerned about. So we need to talk about our critical digital dependencies. What companies are we dependent upon? What services do we absolutely have to have? What infrastructures are in place and available? And then what assets, if harmed, would cause grave economic and national security consequences? And when we start to think about that, we need to define what's important and identifying the country's top priorities for its economic agenda, the digital economy. And as we've said here, you know, the connectivity is probably the #1 thing for the Kyrgyz Republic. You know, only 38% of the population is connected to the internet and the infrastructure. And that's been recognized by a number of the different policy documents that have been published, whether it's the Digital Kyrgyzstan from 2019 to 2023 to accelerate the digital transformation, the National Development Strategy that from 2018 to 2040 that really identified the Tazakum, you know, agenda with, you know, Tazakum's 7 goals and its 4 strategic tasks. I would argue that Tazakum has, you know, identified that the Kyrgyz Republic wants to be the regional hub for digital and for digital business, digital innovations for the region, and be the Silk Road, the digital Silk Road for the region. And within the strategic task, you know, identifying and creating a favorable ICT ecosystem by improving the legislation and regulation and enabling those infrastructures and adopting the latest international standards. Within those top priorities, there is a digital agenda for Kyrgyz, but an industrial policy, a research and development strategy, a national cybersecurity strategy, which was also published for 2019 to 2023, and has a really robust action plan. Thinking about the export strategy, foreign direct investment and import strategy, and how to create those foundations for success. When I think about it, can we identify the top companies that represent more than 2% of the country's GDP and the most important critical, again, infrastructure, services, and assets? When I had the opportunity to come to the Kyrgyz Republic, it was very clear that there were certain elements of the country that are critical, whether it's the agriculture industry, the production of gold, of raw materials, the energy from the Naran River. And there are key things in industries that must remain digitally resilient and can digitally transform into the next generation. We have to think about whether or not there are, how we're going to incentivize this digital transformation. And I look at these as 2 sets of metrics. We can and work for incentives with tax credits, subsidies, rate recovery, research grants. And we can also look for penalties of the regulatory frameworks, the fines, inspection, investigations, minimum standards. And you're seeing more countries move toward the regulatory and fines versus the incentives and the tax credits. And so therefore, when we go for a penalty-based system, it actually slows down the rate of digital transformation. We also are looking at how do you align that digital agenda with the security agenda. All too often in all of the countries that I've worked with, the digital agenda like Digital Kyrgyzstan or the National Development Strategy generally are void of thinking about the resilience, the security, the safety of what we need. And I think of it as cybersecurity, or digital security, data protection, and the resilience of our critical infrastructures and services. So when we think about our digital agenda, we talk about an economic prosperity, the productivity, the efficiency, the innovation, the modernization of our core infrastructures, and GDP growth. And on the other hand, when we talk about national security, we're talking about infrastructure, resilience, intellectual property protection, data protection, defense of our countries, and potentially the political stability of our bureaucracies. When we get to and start to develop and align our strategies, it's really important that we start and we keep ourselves honest about what we're trying to do. And many countries have published strategies and even have published action plans, but not many are implementing what they've already set out that they wanted to do. We have a strategic vision of where we want to be, but then we need to choose measurable, attainable, result-based, and time-based objectives in that implementation plan. COVID showed us that we really needed to accelerate the connectivity and the stability of the connectivity to our businesses. And in order to maintain the continuity of actually being able to deliver service, to move data across borders and to move capital. We need to execute and recognize that we can't just keep printing money, and we can't keep on just training our, or starting over, recognizing that the people are scarce, that the money is scarce, and other material in order to get it done is scarce, and it's time-based. That if we need to actually consider this that we need to accelerate today and not just keep on delaying for tomorrow and the next day. And then understanding that this is a competition for resources, and we need to be seeking for continuous improvement. When I look at the digital agenda and the security agendas, I'm looking for alignment and whether or not there is one competent authority that's overseeing everything. And it not necessarily at the presidential level, but somebody who's reporting and working for the president. Again, all too often, this is divided across multiple different agencies in our respective government apparatus. And without an overarching coordination mechanism, you start to see the breakdown of the economic aspects and the security and resilience aspects. You know, the State Committee for ICT is really focused on the policy and regulation. The Ministry of Economy is working on that strategy for sustainable development and enabling the e-commerce. You see the Ministry of Internal Affairs working on e-crimes. And you see the State Committee for National Security working on other parts that are the military and the security aspects. Without harmonization across all of the different agencies to get an all of government to get to an all of nation approach, you'll sub-optimize some of the goals that are in these particular strategies. The publication of looking at those, identifying the human and financial resources, and starting to really identify what is the gain of the GDP and measure the losses for your insecurity or lack of resilience. I know that it's important right now to identify those critical services. As of February, Kyrgyz was still working on identifying what their critical services and infrastructures are. And this COVID really identified that maybe we haven't thought about it in the right way, that maybe it really is telecommunications and cloud-based providers and other aspects of our infrastructures that became far more important today than they were 6 months ago. And thinking about how we maintain that continuity of service. When you set the strategy, we have to be accountable, and we have to have our leaders be able to communicate what's at stake and the overall risk at every level, from the government leaders to the common citizen. We need to identify and prioritize the resources, the high value assets and the impact systems, the companies, the infrastructures, the services and assets that we have to look at those vulnerabilities. As Rafal said, we need to develop the appropriate legal and regulatory frameworks to protect society against cybercrime, service disruption, property destruction. And the Kyrgyz Republic has identified 68 laws that need to be updated, and establishing and updating the data privacy law to make it come in line more with the general data protection regulation. Countries around the world are actually updating their legal and regulatory frameworks to bring them into the 21st century of the digital century. And even the United States, we have more than 80 laws that 80 laws that we have to update in our overall framework. There are a number of tools available to us in our governments, whether it's policy, it's legislation, it's regulation, implementing standards to enable our interoperability, the market incentives and other initiatives to help us with our ICTs and increase our use of ICTs and correct deficiencies in the marketplace. We need to improve our overall awareness of what's happening, as our colleagues from Singapore talked about, and getting that outside view of how vulnerable are we and how easily could we be exploited or disrupted based on the vulnerabilities of our infrastructures, services, and companies. We need to think about that preparedness and conduct continuity of planning to respond and recover to the cyber risks, the digital risks, and these large-scale cyber crises. You may not be aware that last week on the 15th of June, the United States experienced a global outage of one of our major telecommunications carriers. 5 days later, London experienced the same thing, and all of London had no internet access. We need to understand when we have a large-scale digital crisis, what that means of the cost per minute, per hour, per day, and what are the emergency services that are no longer available. We need to engage in the international community, as we've been working with at the World Bank and the UNDP and ITU, for the resilience of our interoperable networks. We need to be able to move money across borders. We need to have telecommunications uninterrupted. We need to have a resilient supply of energy. And we need to anticipate the future technology advancements. If we're going to become the digital Silk Road, we need to be thinking about the artificial intelligence, the blockchain technologies, quantum-based technologies, and the things that could enable our digital transformation of the future, but anticipate the risks and the problems that might come about with those key areas. So these are some of the things that I've been thinking about from overall national perspective. I work with countries around the world and companies around the world to how do you align your digital appetite with the need for security and resilience at its core. I'll conclude there with my remarks, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you, Rafal.
Thank you very much, Melissa, for that very comprehensive view, not just of the importance of cybersecurity, but I think, as you've said, balancing both your economic priorities with your security priorities, understanding how to be able to actually measure the impact of your investment, which I think are two very important things when making priority decisions. From the first enabler, business continuity, and the second enabler, the focus on cybersecurity, let's now turn to the third enabler, which is data protection and privacy. And we're very honored to have with us today Andrew Stott, who was previously the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the UK. So as the title will indicate, someone who has had a lot of thinking that I had to put on the value of data and the importance of data governance. So Andrew, over to you.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I come to this from the point of data and data as an asset and a tool of management and governance. That good data is essential for management. It's essential for transparency and analysis, and for analysis as well. So it's a truism that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that's why, for instance, the World Bank has put a lot of effort into data supporting the Sustainable Development Goals, and why all good managers use data effectively to target resources, to anticipate issues, and to manage crises, as is happening now. Data that you can analyze. So that's a richness of data that you can, explore what's really going on is important, because you need to intervene at the causes, not just on the effects. So often when a crisis hits, what you're seeing is the effects, but actually finding out the causes, where the cases are, what's causing them, what interventions are working and are not, is important. And transparency of data is also important, particularly in the sort of crisis that we're now in where you need to maintain the confidence of the public. And good data doesn't come by accident. Getting timely and accurate data is not an issue of just getting the right technology. It's a matter of getting the right human systems to collect that. Robert McNamara, who was a distinguished president of the World Bank in the 1970s, and before that, Secretary of Defense under President Kennedy's administration, and then before that had a long career in Ford, made his name as a data cruncher, sort of numbers man. And in the Second World War, he was reputed to have run the US Air Force on the basis of spreadsheets. And in those days, a spreadsheet was a sheet of paper on which you wrote figures. But actually, when you read a biography of him, very little of his time was spent in an office in the Pentagon crunching figures. Most of it was going around theaters of war, talking to Air Force commanders on the need to supply accurate, up-to-date, timely data on what they were doing, what they were consuming, what their issues were. So that could be analyzed and taken into account in the direction of the logistics of the Air Force. So data is not just a technology issue. Data needs standards. It needs to flow in a frictionless fashion. So if you've got a crisis, you can't afford to have an argument over, well, can some people have this data, on what terms can they have it, and so on. And there need to be defined procedures for data protection and anonymization. And people need to understand the personal data that they hold, how that can be protected, if it needs to be analyzed, where it is essential to use personal data, and where you can actually effectively anonymize the data for analysis, and that's actually many of the cases. COVID-19 has put this very much into sharp relief. The pandemic appeared very quickly, little time to put new systems into place, and let alone let them bed down and get people to report accurately. We've seen parts of national data systems that no one has really worried about suddenly come into sharp relief. So death reporting, people have been dying, forever. Deaths have been recorded in many countries in some detail for centuries. And yet the systems that have been in place in many European countries have been shown to be lacking. There are very long time lags. Excess deaths in Italy only come out about 2 months after the deaths. There have been halted, so a number of countries have only reported deaths in hospital in near real time, and deaths in care homes and in the community have not been reported in a timely fashion, and that has led to care homes, for instance, being overlooked in a number of countries. And because different countries have different standards and different time lags, it's been very difficult to compare and contrast national performances. We also see in many countries the data at the weekends is much significantly lower than data on weekdays, even though medical evidence has previously shown that actually hospitals have more deaths at weekends because they tend to have lower staffing levels and so on. And that's also a function of the reporting system. It's also notable that there's been no official world statistics on COVID-19. Everyone seems to use the Johns Hopkins University figures. And I don't know whether the WHO have those figures, but they don't actually lead opinion and thought on this. I think on the more positive side, we see cases where good data good data exists, and policies can be defined to leverage that data in the response. So, for instance, in the UK, all the employer part of the taxation system has been digitized for about 10 years now. You cannot, as an employer, you cannot submit information about your employees and the tax due on them by paper. It all has to be done electronically. And as part of the response, the tax authorities in the UK reversed the tax flow to give support to employees and indeed self-employed people in less than a month, just by using the data they already had about who was an employee of which company, who had what business, and by using that data of what they were earning, just reverse the flow to give support to people who were out of work due to the crisis. We've also seen in the health service in the UK, actually the hospitals have a very effective near real-time reporting system day by day that's used for all sorts of reasons. There are well-practiced processes of individual hospitals reporting in specific data and a system to collect that, processes to train people to collect a particular type of data. And that's worked very well on hospital cases and also on things like hospital supplies. And that's one of the ways that the UK has managed to spread the load of COVID-19 across hospitals to avoid individual hospitals being overwhelmed. So I think that's what I would say. And data actually then empowers things like public health officials and other actors to respond effectively. I think I'm probably out of time on that. I could talk about this for a long time, but I will say again, data is absolutely crucial. Think of it as an asset. Think how if you've got the data, how then you can leverage it as part of your response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you very much for emphasizing the importance of data as one of the key enablers of digital resilience. I'd like to turn now to Farid from the ITU. ITU has had a very important role in helping national entities build capacity for resilience overall, but focused a lot actually historically on the role of infrastructure development. So that very digital divide that we talked about that crucially reduces the effectiveness of the digital environment for national transformation. So Farid, maybe I can call upon you to talk a little bit about the importance of bridging the digital divide and maybe what ITU has done historically as part of its contribution that now is so important to national digital resilience. Over to you, Farid.
Thank you very much, Rafal. And in my intervention, I would like to mention the guide that we have on digital national cybersecurity strategies. And I will do this in Russian. Before switching to Russian, I would like to thank also Melissa for mentioning the national cybersecurity guide that we have. И далее я продолжу на русском свое выступление. Хотел бы сказать, что вот в 2018 году ITU совместно с партнерами, среди которых также и Всемирный банк, опубликовал руководство по разработке национальной стратегии кибербезопасности, которую мы рассматриваем как такой ключевой документ. И в целом национальные стратегии кибербезопасности и цифровой устойчивости мы рассматриваем именно как основополагающий документ для планирования и развития национальной устойчивой инфраструктуры. Да, МСЭ в предыдущие, скажем так, годы своей работы всегда фокусировался на развитии инфраструктуры, но теперь эта инфраструктура стала настолько важна и настолько критически, что вопросы кибербезопасности, вопросы цифровой устойчивости, они общепризнаны на всех уровнях. И хотел бы ряд принципов и тех выдержек из этого документа привести. То есть целью настоящего документа является предоставление руководства, инструмента странам, как разрабатывать свои национальные стратегии, начиная с консультаций и до момента разработки плана действий непосредственно. В руководстве содержится полезная, гибкая, удобная структура рамочная, которая может быть адаптирована, исходя из социально-экономического развития страны, исходя из рисков существующих и принципов. И опять же, вот то, что Рафал говорил о сокращении цифрового разрыва, то есть эта стратегия, она, конечно же, должна быть ориентирована не только на какие-то критически важные государственные ресурсы, но и на защиту пользователей, защиту всех граждан страны от существующих киберугроз, независимо от того, где они находятся. Этапы данной стратегии включают в себя инициирование, то есть создание руководящего комитета, выбор руководящего органа. Хотел бы вот отметить, что очень важно сразу на начальном этапе определиться с ответственными за разработку стратегии, кто то ведомство, которое будет этот вопрос курировать, и получить максимально высокую поддержку на уровне правительства страны. Далее выполняется обзор и анализ критической инфраструктуры, анализ имеющегося опыта, оценивается положение дел в стране, положение дел с киберугрозами, то есть составляется такой landscape угроз. Разрабатывается национальная стратегия с консультациями, с максимально широким консультацией всех заинтересованных, реализуется и выполняется ее мониторинг и оценка. Конечно же, этот процесс циклический. То есть в этом процессе присутствуют такие органы, как высший орган исполнительной власти, который, собственно, дает политическую поддержку процессу разработки стратегии, определяет руководящий орган по проекту. Также присутствует руководящий комитет, в который входит и высшее руководство страны, и представители ключевых стейкхолдеров. И еще мы рекомендуем также формировать консультативный комитет, более широкую группу заинтересованных лиц, чтобы эта стратегия, она действительно была такой всеобъемлющей. В документе содержится ряд всеобъемлющих принципов, которые, наверное, с учетом времени я не буду перечислять. Хотелось бы отметить каких-то вот ряд лучших практик, которые, мне кажется, применимы для Кыргызстана, для стран Центральной Азии. Это то, что вот я уже упоминал, поддержка на высоком уровне, это создание компетентного органа по вопросам кибербезопасности, это обязательно обеспечение внутриправительственного сотрудничества. И часто мы видим, когда межведомственное сотрудничество и связанные с ним трудности бывают, сдерживают такой всеобъемлющий подход к разработке стратегии кибербезопасности, цифрового устойчивости. Очень важно, чтобы стратегия не только обозначала задачи, цели, KPI, но также был конкретный план осуществления данной стратегии. Важно использовать комплексный подход к определению рисков. Еще вот такой конкретный инструмент, который может использоваться, составление профилей рисков секторов в области кибербезопасности. Да, и здесь можно также активно привлекать экспертизу частного сектора. Есть организации, которые помогают решать именно этот вопрос. Очень важный вопрос для всех наших стран — это создание потенциала реагирования на киберинциденты. То есть можно, конечно, заявлять большие амбициозные задачи для стратегии.
Sorry to interfere, Farid. Can you just select the Russian channel so that people are in English, they can clearly just click on the language and then select Russian.
Да, я сделал. Как теперь все правильно?
Yes, it's clear now. It's clear now, yeah.
Да, спасибо большое. И такой вопрос, как создание потенциала реагирования на киберинциденты, построение национальных команд реагирования на киберинциденты, создание навыков противодействия киберугрозам на национальном уровне, навыков защиты критической информационной инфраструктуры. Еще один момент, на который мы всегда обращаем внимание, это важность обмена информацией, да, внутри страны, на двусторонней основе, через ассоциации ЦЕРТа, то есть, допустим, вот ITU оказывал содействие, в том числе Кыргызстану, по присоединению к одной региональной организации ОИХСР, да, еще одной стране мы оказывали содействие в регионе по вступлению в ассоциацию FIRST, то есть мы очень приветствуем и всячески стимулируем обмен информацией. Мы считаем, что это один из ключевых факторов построения киберустойчивой национальной экосистемы. Еще одна лучшая практика — это, конечно же, проведение учений по кибербезопасности. ITU проводит региональные учения, и часто эти региональные учения используются как модель для стран по проведению учений на национальном уровне. И, наверное, еще хотелось бы отметить о важности построения государственно-частного партнерства при планировании мер противодействия киберпреступности. Как вот представитель организации ООН также хочу сказать, что вот вопросы признания и защиты прав и свобод личности должны обязательно быть неотъемлемой частью стратегического документа. И, конечно же, правоприменительная практика. Довольно часто это становится каким-то тоже слабым звеном, да, на национальном уровне. То есть принимаются руководящие документы, но правоприменительная практика, возможно, отстает. Международный союз электросвязи выступает фасилитатором работы по разработке национальной стратегии. Мы помогаем странам применить это руководство, провести нужные консультации на национальном уровне. Также у нас есть ряд инструментов, которые страны могут использовать как метрики. Да? Допустим, глобальный индекс кибербезопасности МСЭ, он является ключевой метрикой для национальной стратегии кибербезопасности Казахстана, киберщит, про который, я думаю, многие хорошо знают. Вот, на этом, наверное, все. I think that's it with my intervention. Rafal, back to you.
Спасибо, Фарид. У нас осталось несколько минут.
You're on mute.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Farid, for that overview of ITU's work, and recognize minutes for the panel discussion, and that there have been some questions for the audience. I'd like to be able to hand over to Oleg Petrov, the World Bank officer responsible for the Digital CASA program overall in Central Asia. And Oleg, one of the questions that really has come up in the questions submitted by people online is there really a best practice for national digital resilience? And what could an organization such as the World Bank do regionally to help countries build this more holistic view of these enablers that we talked about that would help them with their digital transformation in times of COVID? So Oleg, over to you for the final word before we hand over back to Shavkat and the chairman for concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Rafal. I hope you can hear me. It's my great pleasure to be with you and to connect the dots between a number of great organizations and experts who are present today. So World Bank is not just a financial bank, we're also a knowledge bank. So in this role, we're very happy to provide the platform for knowledge sharing, policy dialogue like this. So we hope this is just the first event of its kind. So I'd like to thank our partners at the University of Central Asia and UNDP and ITU, and of course the government represented by the State Committee for ICT. And congratulations, Altenbeck, on your important role. We are happy to support this agenda in Central Asia. I'm the coordinator for digital resilience aspect of the digital agenda, so it's Central Asia. So I'm very happy to work with Kyrgyzstan as our first pilot country to explore the holistic approach to ensuring digital resilience, safeguarding digital transformation. And today's topic of why countries need strategy, I think it was very well illustrated by different speakers. Thank you, Rafal, for a very detailed, comprehensive keynote speech, and various panelists provided excellent illustrations of importance of different aspects of that framework. And as was just said by Farid, everything starts with leadership and vision. So if there is a clear vision, a clear strategy, clear vision, I think the rest would be much easier to implement if you know where you're going. So I think today's topic helped us to map out that vision and that journey ahead of us to ensure that all the elements, the enablers, the foundations, the pillars of digital resilience are in place for Kyrgyzstan to really safeguard its digital transformation, digital economy, which during COVID-19 becomes critical success factor. So the balancing act, the subtle balancing act, which Melissa also was talking about, I think it's very important to get it right. So not to overdo in terms of the digital transformation or in terms of security dimension. Right? So we need to balance this properly and to be able to achieve economic and social objectives while at the same time managing the risks. So having that risk framework is, I think, very helpful. The World Bank has strong commitment to work with our partners in Kyrgyzstan and Central Asia to both further develop this framework and the strategy and the action plan, prioritize the most important actions, and actually help fund those actions through Digital CASA program, which is available. It's fully active right now. We've been implementing this for now more than a year, actually almost 2 years. So everything is available for us to agree with the government partners, with the other partners, what needs to be done, and to move ahead on those few priorities which will be identified. So we're very happy to work together and building on international best practice. You asked whether there is a single case, a success story of digital resilience strategy in the world. I think it's $1 million question. I think Korea is one example of a country which has thought a lot about holistic approach to digital resilience, and they have been doing relatively well in the current COVID crisis. I think we had a great seminar a few weeks ago focusing on Korea experience. So today we didn't talk as much about Korea because we had a 2-hour discussion on that with a number of countries in Central Asia. Of course, Singapore is also doing very well, in this area, even though they're also having challenges, as I guess Korea in managing the COVID situation. But I think overall these countries are doing relatively well. And we need to look more closely at international experience, which we're doing right now, and we will produce report and detailed recommendation for national strategy on digital resilience based on the analysis. Like working with Rafal, that thank you very much for doing that research. We hope to present the results very soon, and we look forward to continuing this collaboration with our partners in the region, in Kyrgyzstan, and to specific items which we need to focus on in terms of building capabilities for digital resilience, institutional capabilities, the human skills capacity. We were discussing the possibility, for example, of Resilience Operations Center, which will ensure strong operational capabilities for managing these risks in the medium long term, and handling the next COVID-19 crisis very effectively, or other such crises. We were discussing creating a platform for capacity building and innovation. For example, Central Asia Digital Resilience Institute has been discussed as an institutional response to this crisis. We've been discussing organizing regional fora, on digital resilience, which will help bring together key stakeholders, hopefully in person. Today was a great opportunity to connect virtually, but we look forward to the day when we'll see each of you in Bishkek or in other cities in Central Asia to really work closer together over the course of a couple of days in a regional forum on digital resilience. So I think all these and many other things are very interesting for us. We'd like to support the government in this agenda, and of course we have Digital Classic program, which is fully effective, which is available to support digital resilience agenda. And we will work with our counterparts in Altenbeck, especially to make this success story, not just for Central Asia, but for the world. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Oleg. And on that, I'd like to thank very much all of our panelists for having underlined the crucial importance of these key enablers to digital resilience. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to more questions from the audience, but I have been texting our presenters to make sure that in their comments they were addressing some of the issues that you've raised. I think we all agree that resilience from shocks such as COVID-19 can be both achieved through digital means, and those digital means themselves need to be made more resilient in order to serve the interests of society. On that, I'd like to thank very much the University of Central Asia and turn this over to Shavkat to ask Altanbek Ismailov for some final comments. Shavkat, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rafael, and thank you very much all the distinguished speakers. I think it's a lot of information for all of us to learn, and there are a lot of advices based on your experience. So I'm sure that we all got a lot of points for reflection, and then a lot of things to work in our future also. With those words, I would like to invite Altanbek Ismailov, Chairman, Information Technology and Communications, to close the conference, and then thank the audience, and also brief us for some next steps.
Thank you so much, Shavkat. Can you hear us?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much for University of Central Asia and all the partners for organizing this wonderful event. I think it was really insightful to learn about digital resilience and all of the angles which comes with the digital resilience issues. I think for all of the participants, it was very much enlightening, and I would like to emphasize a couple of points that has been covered in the discussion today. So first of all, I think the important concept is digital citizenship. And by that, it means how our Kyrgyzstan is connected to the world. Not everyone knows it, but we are really struggling from the Kyrgyz Republic to be a part of this IT or digital global community. I think not all of you know that we are excluded from the list of Google developers and Google merchants. And essentially, our IT developers here in Kyrgyzstan do not have an access to certain Google products or to certain payment mechanisms. So I think, you know, the case is same for such systems as PayPal, for Apple Pay and other, for instance, other services which are even available in such countries as neighboring countries as Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and others. We are also excluded from certain services from Russia as well. And I think, you know, the one thing that I want to pinpoint is that the digital development is not, you know, circumscribed in Kyrgyzstan only. We want to be a part of a global community, digital global community, and to be effective part of this community, we really need to think about what standards do we need to comply in order to essentially be compliant with all of the expectations that is coming from all around the world. And I think, you know, questions about resiliency, questions about meeting standards, questions about, you know, how we need to manage privacy issues, how we need to manage cybersecurity issues and other financial standards that is being put on country. And I think we need to think about how Kyrgyz Republic can be part of this global community. I think this is really essential. So second part, I think it has been raised multiple times. We really need to think about businesses, about our businesses, and essentially ensuring continuity of our businesses. So whether it's SMEs who are just discovering digital technologies and how it can be used for their productivity, we also need to think about how we can develop such simple things like e-commerce or digital payments or mobile payments. And I think it's really an important time to think about it and essentially think that, you know, during COVID times, a lot of businesses will be in lockdown, and essentially thinking about how they can restart their businesses using digital tools. I think it's a very important thing to think about. I think last but not least, obviously, as a government agencies, we are thinking about how we can ensure continuity of government services. And there are a lot of, you know, components that are already included in digital CASA, as it has been put as government as a digital platform, and other, you know, being digital from the beginning till the end, and other important principles that we are raising right now. And of course, as questions related how we ensure the protection of data of the citizens, how we are ensuring cybersecurity of our systems and also security of our infrastructure has a paramount importance. As you might know, Kyrgyz Republic has adopted a cybersecurity strategy in August 2019. Within the plans of the State Committee on Information Technologies and Communications, we are planning to set up an authority which essentially will be overseeing the compliance of protection of personal data, and essentially the very much suggestions that you already have described, and we are already looking forward. But obviously, all of these things are coming with certain challenges and issues like education and education of special government employees, education of government employees in general, and education of citizens and businesses about how to stay or how to keep their data private and how to keep their data secure has very much a very big importance. So at the end of my remark, I just want to pinpoint once again the importance of collaboration and international collaboration of different sectors. And I think it is very symbolic that University of Central Asia is leading such type of conference, and we need academia in all of the kind of directions that we are discussing today. But it is also important contribution of such organizations as the World Bank, UNDP, ITU, and many other partners who are participating today, so that we can think and devise and develop a modern digital resilience strategy, and as Oleg put it, to be an exemplary project for neighboring countries as we are moving forward. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you for inviting here. We will be much more happy, very much happy to participate in such events even further. Thank you so much, Shaukat.
Thank you very much, Altenbek, and then we are really happy that today you started your remarks with this international conference and your new journey. And just to take this opportunity, I would like to also especially thank Oleg and Rafael for putting together this whole plan and inviting all the speakers, distinguished speakers. So thank you very much, everyone. And we're really looking forward to working together with all our partners for the betterment of this country and Central Asia in large. Thank you, everyone, and have a very nice afternoon, and thank you.